Live service is failing. Fortnite is dying. Everything is over.
Oh boy.
That's bad.
Oh boy.
The cost of running Fortnite has gone up a lot, and we're raising prices to help pay the bills.
It's done.
About 2 weeks ago, that is all that Epic Games told players about a price hike for their premium currency, the humble V-Buck. But it turns out they had far more brutal plans for their staff and partners. And now, 1,000 staff have just been laid off from Epic Games.
Wow.
That's about 20% of the company.
That's a
There's
huge amount.
$500 million in operating cost cuts
shit.
on top of that. And since the story broke, we've been speaking to insiders. And we can see that the impact of this decision is going to hit far more than just Fortnite.
Well,
because
yeah,
we know 1,000 staff are gone from Epic. But what about the ripple effects everywhere else and the other cuts? Turns out
multiverses. Remember that game? It died.
Rough. Epic Games just showed the world that one of the few pillars holding up the games industry, Fortnite, is in fact shaky. Right now, we're approaching the end of the financial year for most companies, and that means it's usually when the big publicly listed giants start cutting staff to make their end-of-year reports look good.
That's right.
But of course, Epic Games are a private company, and in theory, they are one of the most successful companies on the planet. I mean, Fortnite prints money, right? So according to this announcement, for once, this is actually not about AI-driven efficiency. Instead, Epic freely admits they are, quote, spending significantly more than they're making, and they say that the 1,000 layoffs and 500 million in cuts to contracting, marketing, and hiring will balance out their books. And they give many reasons why. There's the same general economic situation that we've seen everyone.
Honestly, you got to respect Tim for just laying it out. He just said, yeah, we don't have as many people playing right now, and we got to save money. Like, I really do respect that. Somebody that just tells it to me straight.
Publisher or
That's crazy that there's not a lot of people playing Fortnite. I would think there's a lot of more people playing it, but I never really looked at the player numbers, so maybe I'm wrong. Damn.
Maybe just you
they hired too many people. They did.
Specifically for them, it means that growth and spending are both down because players have got less money, costs have went up, and the total industry player growth just.
Don't forget the fucking people aren't making as much money now too, because the value of our currency in this country has gone down to shit. So there's that too.
Just has not increased as people expected. Turns out that as engaging as video games are, well,
the fact that
a vertical feed of videos may in fact be more engaging for many people. Now, there are other reasons as well, Epic-specific reasons, and here's what they've said about that. In being the industry's vanguard, we have
by far and ever many one of the most successful games in the world. We've had challenge delivering consistent Fortnite magic with every season. We're only in the early stages of returning to mobile and optimizing Fortnite for the world. Billions of smartphones, and being the industry's vanguard, we have taken a lot of, I don't know what that is because it's covered up, blah blah blah. And isn't Save the World is going to be free in April, like I think April 19th too, so I wonder if that's a part of this whole thing too.
Taken a lot of bullets in a battle which is only in the early days of paying off for ourselves and all developers. Now what they're referring to there is all the legal stuff. And as an example, Fortnite only just came back to Android last week, and it hit iOS again last year. And at least one of those returns is reportedly tied to an $800 million deal with Epic paying Google over 6 years.
That's a lot of money.
That came after 5 years of course, legal crusading from Epic to crowbar open the phone ecosystem. They basically wanted liberalization in storefronts and payment providers.
I remember
this.
Well, the storefronts and Epic is totally right, by the way. They're completely justified and totally in the right with this. The amount of basically there's a duopoly that exists between the Google Play Store and the Apple Play Store. And it's completely unfair to everybody because they've effectively monopolized the entire market between the two of them. And I think it needs to be regulated. That's what I think.
They can launch their own store and do the payment providing themselves. That, of course, means a better revenue share. They absolutely succeeded on that. And as much as they stand to benefit from that, many of the rest of us do as well. Some of that legal crowbarring is probably good, but for them, it's been absolutely
expensive
victory. Because all that money they weren't collecting during all that time, you know, could have paid for developers.
How'd you put that to Tim Sweeney? Here's what he had to say in response. Yeah, I think we might run into serious financial problems after a couple more decades of this, but we're determined to fight this out. I expect large parts of the struggle will go on throughout the rest of this. Blocked out. We're fully committed to going through it. Blah, blah, blah. Something breakthrough.
Yes,
Back
exactly.
in January of 2025, Tim Sweeney told IGN that they could afford to fight Apple and Google.
And that was this is from 2025 in January. So it was like literally over a year ago they said this.
Decades.
Yeah.
So
what
obviously something changed. He was not anticipating these layoffs. The company clearly projected that they would be making more money by this point, but they're obviously not. The money's not coming in, meaning that Epic are cutting their spending, so let's talk about those cuts. First, you need to know that all this follows the 2023 layoffs, which were 830 employees, about 16% of the company.
Damn. So like they've dropped like 2,000 people then. Holy shit.
And the divestment of Bandcamp. Yeah, I don't think Bandcamp was ever going to save their finances. Now, back then, the reasons given were that creator content profit margins weren't high enough, and the company was spending too much, and that 2/3 of costs sat outside of their core development teams. And now...
Yeah, there's probably HR and other types of management roles that don't add any value to a company. I really do think, and this is in 2023, I do really think that Elon buying Twitter, firing 80% of people, and then the product not changing was like a light bulb moment for the entire tech industry.
Yep.
And after he did that, he broke the ice, and then everybody started.
Because you know what I think that also did? I'm in agreement. Like, I just want to add to what he's saying. Is that I think that also showed that you keep essential roles, keep essential people. Obviously, you can keep track of who's performing and who's not performing and what roles are essential and what roles are. And it sucks that there are people who are losing their jobs, livelihood, and all this other shit. But I think these companies are thinking about the company and how can they keep the company alive for another year, 2, 3, 4. I don't know how far their projections are, but that's essentially what I think is going to start happening across the board in most tech companies.
Doing it afterwards.
Well, cuts are happening again. So
that's what I
here's what's
think
happening. The peripheral game modes like Rocket Racing, Ballistic, and Festival Battle Stage are all being sunset.
Nobody
though in
gives
each
a
case,
shit about
the
them.
tools
Nobody
and
plays them.
systems will be released into UEFN for player creation.
Wait,
which
what? For developers building car content, in April, we're adding car physics hazards, a track building tools, including the track split tool and speed boost devices to the base. We'll be able to build racetrack islands with jumps. Okay, so basically, you can build island. You'll be able to make your own shit. Okay.
which honestly is a fairly good thing.
Seems like a good idea.
Normally in video games, that would just all go into the bin. That would be that.
For developers, first-person shooter tools, and made available. To support in order to develop. Okay, so basically, creator modes, custom modes are going to be unfazed.
Yeah.
Going to the community is actually a little bit of a silver lining.
It's an
and as
improvement.
much as it's not going to be great for those staff, maybe it is nice that at least some of their work does get to live on and get into the hands of players.
Yeah, of course.
Outside of Fortnite, games like Horizon Chase and its enhanced version, Horizon Chase Turbo, have suddenly been announced for delisting. Basically, their developer is owned by Epic. So what we see is that experimentation and some degrees of ongoing support are basically over. And even the incoming free-to-play version of Save the World, originally a paid mode, is an attempt to get more money from a game that frequently rivals the top 100 of Steam. So you can basically see that Epic is looking at their worst performing official modes, they're cutting them loose.
Well, yeah, they're getting rid of the stuff that loses money. I mean, I think that
Yeah,
makes
like,
a lot
Save
of
the
sense.
World.
Honestly.
Save the World's not
why
that
wouldn't
great.
the company make this decision? It's a good call.
Like Save the World is fun.
All right. We're good.
So Save the World is fun. I didn't beat it, but a lot of people don't own it because a lot of people aren't paying for it because why would they? The Battle Royale is free. So I could see that.
Excuse me. We good.
Community, and they are laying off the devs who worked on them. Oh, but they're not stopping there. Experienced staff are being cut, like, say, principal engineers who have been there since 2017.
Yeah.
And even a director of character art who created Fortnite's most famous characters. And you gotta
Damn.
think, for a game monetized like Fortnite, I mean, character art really does seem like it's something
That's
that helps the
important.
bottom line.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah, it
think about
matters.
that, and then see Tim Sweeney posting about how the fired staff are in the, quote, top few percent of the discipline, you really see how bad this would appear to be. I mean, Sweeney is absolutely projecting. These are brilliant people. You should absolutely hire them. This is an unprecedented wave of talent that I have graciously injected into the labor market. But obviously implicit in that is that if these are the top percent, then they're really not the sort of people you want to lose in your company. So that does suggest that
it could also mean that they just changed the way that they develop games and like what their process is. I think that's another big component, and I think that's what probably happened, is that they changed the way they have a process because it wastes money the way they're doing it now. I think that makes sense, and I think it's going to continue, especially as you have like technology, not just AI, but like everything that's able to effectively do these people's jobs for them. I think that's what's going to happen. And also, like, a lot of people have a very weird relationship that they think companies should have as employers, where they think that this company should employ you even when the company doesn't get value out of it. So they think that the company has like a moral responsibility to fund you indefinitely, even though they don't need you or need to make money off of you anymore, right? I think this is a very, very toxic mindset, and nobody would actually, and the issue why I don't like this is because people don't have this standard for themselves. If you moved into an apartment, you wouldn't continue paying the guy that mows your lawn. Nobody would do this. Nobody would make this decision. So in people's personal lives, they would never make this decision, but they expect every company to make this decision. Why is that? Because they want the company's money.
The only thing with that I'm kind of just like, all right, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. The only thing that doesn't make sense is getting rid of the person who's basically doing character art and developing your character's designs. Unless there's another system in place or another person that is actually a part of that. Because again, a lot of this information that's coming out, there's a very good chance that it could just be vague posts without too much detail. They could be talking about, oh yeah, this person, we're getting rid of this person for this, but we also kept on these people because they're a part of this, and they do this the best. I don't know. I wouldn't know. I'm not on the inside.
It's that simple. So again, it's not a principle. It's just greed.
Basic economics are kind of fucked. But what we've talked about so far, the cuts to modes and stuff, only tell you part of the story. Because underneath all of this, there is a question about Fortnite itself.
Ooh, is Fortnite dead?
And how Epic just did not plan for the money printer to finally slow down. If Fortnite is succeeding, then Epic.
You know what's something too that I noticed, because I did pick up Fortnite again. I got nothing better to do, so I figured why not try it. There's a lot more bots in the lobbies. There's a lot more bots in the lobbies. Now, could it just be that I'm in lobbies with bots because of some weird server thing, or are there just not enough players anymore? I've never looked at the statistics or the stats to see what the player base is. But I'm running into a lot of bots, and I know they're bots because real people don't move like that.
Can afford huge legal crusades. They can afford to expand, afford to experiment. But in 2025, Fortnite was not succeeding. Player numbers were wildly variable all of that year. The 0 Hour crossover event in November pulled in more than 10 million people, but that's was the exception. People kind of swung between being thrilled at new modes like Blitz Royale and the Simpsons crossover, which was by all accounts loved, but then bored to tears by the drawn-out Star Wars season, fronted by, of course, Gen AI Vader. This stuff doesn't mean that Fortnite is...
I'm gonna be honest, I think Gen AI Vader was probably one of the best things they did.
I thought
it
so
had
too.
more like viral marketing and viral advertising for Fortnite than almost anything else.
Like, that was
I think that it was a great idea. It's hilarious.
Actively collapsing. Circana analyst Matt Piscatella points out that in the US last
They got
month,
people talking about Fortnite.
55% of players in PlayStation played Fortnite for 16 hours on average, while 31% of Xbox players played it for 15 hours. That's a lot of people Fortniting. I mean, a third of the install base is playing this game.
That's a lot.
Really is a worrying thing. I mean, if success this hard is not really financially sustainable, oh dear, is this entire thing built on sand? In a way,
I think that what it's built on is it's built on the projection of growth. And so once a company, because company, what they do is they overhire because they plan for 20% growth years. But whenever they don't have a 20% growth year, it doesn't mean that the company is failing. It doesn't mean the product is failing. It just means that it's no longer growing and it's reached market maturity. Every product reaches market maturity, whether it's Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite, World of Warcraft, or anything else. There is a point in time where the number stops going up.
Exactly.
And when it hits that point, it doesn't mean that the product has failed.
Yep.
It means that it's just simply stopped growing its user base
That's
because
it.
it's hit market saturation.
Yeah.
This is the most normal, reasonable, common sense thing to happen.
Yeah.
So whenever you have companies that are building for being 20% larger year after year, and that stops happening, then you have to recalibrate the size of your company, because you're not building your company. It's like basically people that buy houses that have like 8 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms, and it's just a man and a woman. Well, they're not buying that house for themselves. They're buying that house because they're going to have kids, and the kids are going to move into those apartments, right? Or not apartments, into those rooms. And usually after their kids move out, many parents decide to move into a smaller house after that. So, but it's about planning for the future. You see what my point is?
Yeah. He makes valid
Maybe.
point.
You see, the problem
Does that make
is that
sense?
last February, those averages were
No,
21
it doesn't.
and
I'm
19
kidding.
hours.
It's
So the time is actually going down. And when your entire business model runs on engagement driving spending, losing 4 to 5 hours per player per month is a serious hit to your revenue. And in Epic's year in review, they said the total gameplay declined to only 6.65 billion hours. That's a lot of hours,
is
but
that
it's in
low?
the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And leadership's response was to squeeze harder. But
Well,
the
it's
thing is-
also like they want to stop, like, for example, like whenever you're turning a big ship, you can't turn the ship immediately. Whenever you see something on the horizon, you have to make a decision today that will allow you to avoid a problem or a collision in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense, honestly.
I could see
It
that.
does.
is the crossovers alone were not enough, and some
Hell
of the
no, like the
crossovers
South Park?
were actually loved, like the Simpsons one. In November 2025, Fortnite started
Even
to
I
look
saw the
a
Simpsons
little
one.
bit more like Roblox. That's because on top of existing engagement payouts, individual
looks
island
good.
servers could start selling microtransactions paid for
No
in
shit.
premium currency. Now, it was a 100% revenue split for the first months, and then 50% to Epic after February. Seems like a good way to make money, but it just didn't move the needle. So a month later, the price of V-Bucks went up, with all bonus currency from the battle passes being eliminated. That's quite brutal. Now, players
Jesus.
understandably didn't see how
shit.
that was their problem and
Uh-huh.
Oh my
responded
God.
with outrage,
That's
Yeah, sure.
especially given a perceived drop in core seasonal content quality over
Was
the
that The
last few
Rock?
months. Now, obviously, this isn't a case of people saying, we hiked the prices, you guys should have
That was
really paid
fucking
attention
fun.
to
I'm
that
sorry,
and
that
actually
was fun.
jumped on top of it and just bought loads of shit so that you could protect our staff. Obviously,
sure.
no one really thinks that. I don't think Tim Sweeney thinks that. These layoffs are not the fault of players, but I think they're also not really...
Another big problem that I think Fortnite has is that the game has a massive skill gap. And the big difference between Fortnite and Roblox is that Fortnite is defined by as a competitive game that is challenging, that people can be good at. Roblox, you can't really be good at Roblox. And because of that, there are a lot more people that it is accessible to. Like, if you're a brain dead 5-year-old, it's going to be hard for you to do anything in Fortnite because you're just going to get killed instantly every single time.
Right.
So you might play the game because it's really popular, but are you really getting a fulfilling experience whenever you're just getting farmed constantly? Not really, because the game is complex. There are so many mechanics that are complex. Whereas when in Roblox, you just join a server and the server is, throwing snowballs at each other. And I think that the simplicity of Roblox is what's allowed it to kind of eat into Fortnite's younger generation of players, right? Whenever you're thinking about, especially the 10s and unders, like Fortnite is a complex game. There's a lot to it. And for an 8-year-old, a lot of 8-year-olds, it's going to be easier for them to understand the simplicity and the just brain dead nature of Roblox.
That's like you playing. That's like you strictly playing platform games, and then you try to play a Souls-like.
Versus Fortnite. I think that's a big reason.
the fault of developers either. You see, Fortnite was always going to stop making as much money as it has been
Well, yeah, of
eventually,
course.
It's a decade old. It's an old game.
Damn.
Soon they will
Wow.
be calling Fortnite a boomer game.
Yeah.
Don't we all feel old? No, the
That's
real
crazy.
question here
That's
is
crazy.
what the
Wow.
people running Fortnite did to prepare for this eventuality. And the answer starts with what was happening behind the scenes months before this announcement. So we spoke to a source who worked as an external QA contractor on Fortnite in North America. And we've learned that Epic has actually been cutting for months. We just haven't been able to see
Yep.
it. Stretching as far back as October, contract staff levels have been cut at very short notice, or Epic has tried to negotiate for the same level of support, but of course at a much cheaper deal to themselves.
course.
And from our source's perspective, the workload has not dropped, even as staff numbers have absolutely dropped.
What a
Well-supported
surprise.
external teams like these
What they're going to end up doing is, and I hope this doesn't happen, because Fortnite, as much as I'm not huge into Fortnite, it's going to overwork people, and Fortnite's going to pretty much suffocate, and it's going to literally collapse on itself. There's not going to be enough staff to maintenance the servers. There's not going to be enough new content. There's broken shit in the game that's probably not going to get fixed in time. Ugh. Fortnite's starting to look like Destiny 2. I think we can safely say that Fortnite's turning into Destiny. It's great, it's fun, but I feel like the inevitable is on its way.
These are the sorts of ones that you never really hear about.
could be wrong.
But they are vital to shipping live service games. Now, Fortnite's most recent major update shipped buggy and late. And that was before the $500 million in cuts to contracting and support that they just announced. And
Maybe
this
that's why they did it.
is perhaps the most dangerous part of these layoffs. Okay, systemic impacts. So 1,000 more developers across the globe will join
Yeah, I
the
got that.
thousands already laid
Got
off
one of
this
those.
year, and the tens of
Right
thousands
there.
laid off
Got
over
one
the
of
last
those.
5 years. Each of those former employees will have a wealth of experience, but obviously finding new roles in 2026 is incredibly difficult, especially
With
because they're now
AI.
all competing with each other. And those are
It's also that, like, I think that a lot of the people that are hired to make these games are just garbage at making games. That's a big fucking problem. Like, I think there's a huge component to that too, where a lot of these people are not very talented. They don't really know what they're doing, and they make bad games. Like, and I think that companies have, like, if you guys ever watched one of those like videos where it's like somebody that goes through their day at working at some tech company,
And
and
it's
all
them
they do is
bullshitting.
sit in meetings all day and then, you know, drink coffee and then go
Yeah.
to the place and have lunch, then they go to coffee again, and then they have lunch again, then they have one meeting, then they go home. I mean, it's
seen those.
basically
I
like
hate those
adult
videos.
daycare. It
I hate
is.
those
It's
videos so
adult daycare.
much.
It's a woman thing. Well, yeah, but like, here's the thing: is that whenever you create a bunch of incentives to, proactively hire a bunch of women, and then you have them in all these jobs that are effectively fake jobs, then, well, yeah, I mean, you're losing money at a certain point. And like, this obviously isn't sustainable. It never was sustainable. But I think that because they thought they had to, or because the company was continuing to grow, they thought that these people would eventually be utilized. And so they're kind of used as a buffer to where, like, oh, if the company does grow, then we can utilize this person more. But I think that now, as these companies have reached maturity, they're realizing that not only do we not need these people, but they're actually a waste of money. And so now, or they're costing us money, and now they're being fired. I think that's what's happening.
just the staff directly impacted.
DEI 's
Any
dying.
contracts
Yeah,
with
yeah,
external
definitely is.
developers, support
100% it is.
teams, or QA impacted
Obviously.
by the $500 million in cuts.
Like, they're
That's a
not
lot
going
of
to
money,
replace
and
these
of course
people.
there were cuts leading up to that. Well, those can also lead to layoffs at those companies, ones that
almost had
you
it
probably
off the
won't
cover.
hear about,
That's fine.
as all of these companies scramble to find replacement revenue for what
I do need to make a
previously
coffee for the day.
would have been seen as a fairly safe deal on a big industry titan of a game.
Yeah.
And beyond that, this is Epic Games. One of the biggest game companies on the planet
Fortnite
is
has
making
been
layoffs
such an
like this, and they're
impressive
openly
game.
admitting that they're not making
that's
enough
crazy.
money. Here, it doesn't matter that Epic themselves
Good.
are a private company. The point is that if Epic, sitting on Fortnite, sitting on the Unreal Engine, can't make their numbers work, well, what does that tell every investor evaluating new deals
Oh my god! You know
in
what?
the gaming industry
I gotta
right now?
ask
Think it
questions.
I
also, too.
personally don't agree with this analysis. I think that
Oh, shit.
Epic, just like every other video game company, will reach its maturity level eventually, and that growth will eventually stop. Now, just because their growth has a number of zeros behind it that other companies don't have, doesn't mean that it's not still subservient to the same baseline market forces that every other company is accountable to. So whenever Epic experiences this, I don't think this is really an indicator that like video games are failing or like live service is dying. I think that it's just a reality that eventually all good things maybe don't come to an end, but they stop continuing to make more and more and more money.
Yeah, because
Tells
I
them
mean,
That's what I
floor
how
think.
much money can you
lower
make
than anyone
from
thought.
the same
And
thing?
maybe
You got to
the
introduce
sorts of
something
projects many of those
fresh.
groups were into
Yeah.
funding, the big, exciting live services that would just promise continual, stable revenue month after month after
The
month,
Star Wars
year
thing
after
should have been a
year,
permanent mode.
not the traditional game revenue of,
Yeah.
you know,
Like,
in
that's
3
fun.
years we'll have
That
a
shit is
game
fun.
done, and maybe it'll make a lot of money, maybe it won't. Who knows? It's art. No, there's a reason why they all wanted to fund live services. When they work, live services generate revenue in
Yeah.
a way that is absolutely fantastic for a corporation. So when we
Yep.
see a story like this one happen, there is a real risk of making a difficult funding situation far worse, and at the exact moment that
Well, maybe it should be worse. Maybe if your focus is create a forever game that just endlessly pushes out slop content to get people to play it regularly
more
because
so-
of FOMO, maybe that's not a good business
Yeah.
model. Maybe
Yeah.
that business model is bad. And maybe the market is saying that we don't want that as much as you think you do.
There's a reason why games like Call of Duty. I know Call of Duty has its base people who love playing it. I still play Black Ops 6, but I only play the zombies mode because I have a lot of fun with the zombie mode. We've seen Call of Duty actually dying. I never thought I would see that day, but we finally reached it. Call of Duty is, in my opinion, fucking dying. Fortnite might be the next one to die. Because now we have these games that are coming out that are strictly. We got how many extraction shooter games coming out or have come out, and now it's becoming more of a thing. I think, and this is just my opinion, Fortnite, if Fortnite really wanted to go this way, they could easily make a separate mode and try to capitalize on the extraction shooter thing. I think that would be a great mode. I'd be interested in seeing an extraction kind of setup inside of Fortnite because I like the aesthetic of Fortnite. I like how the game feels. I like how the game plays. All of that stuff. But if they can incorporate some form of an extraction shooter, they might be able to fucking pull themselves up from their bootstraps. That's just my opinion.
Studios
I think that's a good
actually
thing.
do need investment the most. But the thing is, it almost certainly didn't have to be this way. So far, while
I think
many
it did.
directors in Fortnite are getting yoked out the door,
Yeah.
we haven't seen anyone from the executive team take a hit. Of course,
Yes.
those people are the key decision makers here, and here what we see is that the people making Fortnite have been making Fortnite, but the
Yes.
people leading Epic, well, they've been using Fortnite to fund endless dream projects,
Yes.
making the game a platform for creators, deals with Unity to make all games run in Fortnite, deals with Disney to make it the future of marketing. 3 years ago, they overextended and they had to cut back. And now, at least 1,000 people are losing their jobs because the same leadership basically made the same bet again and lost again.
That's what happens.
It doesn't seem like they've learned much,
Yep.
and there don't seem to be many consequences for them. And look, this isn't just an Epic Games problem. This is absolutely everywhere. We've
Across
seen
the
it across
board.
just about all of the big top companies with huge teams placing these huge bets
Yeah.
and then really finding an awful win rate for those bets. So I think this might mean it's time for us to reevaluate where this industry's going and what sort of games
Give me
it's actually
a
focusing
Dark
on,
Souls
because
MMO.
It does not seem to be sustainable. The AA scale
kidding.
game.
I think that definitely you have a lot of
Actually,
these
no,
live
that'd be
service
fire.
games that are not sustainable. And I think that especially the ones that are made by big companies, like recently we had the Marathon release, we had before that High Guard, you obviously had Concord, you've had other games that have released since
think-
then, like New.
I think he secretly loves Concord. I think Concord was his favorite game.
World is an example of this, is that these big companies try to push out a live service game and they invest so much into it that they can't afford to fail. And even more than that, it's not that they can't afford to fail, even, it's that they can't afford to not succeed on a massive level. Like, Marathon would be fine if it made the same money that Arc Raiders did, if it was bringing in the same player base that Arc Raiders brought in, but it's not. And I think that's the issue, is that whenever you set your sights for, you know, this massive, you know, astronomical top 10 on the Steam most played list, and then your game is just simply a mild success for a period of time, like Marathon seems to be a mild success. It's not great. It's a 6 out of 10. But whenever you're betting and you're planning for an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 and you only get a 6, you fail. It's kind of like, you know, in Dungeons and Dragons, if you're trying to like land a hit on some mob that's like really hard to hit, like rolling a 17 might not be enough. You might need an 18 to hit the mob. So even if it's something or a monster, right? I mean, that's how it works. So I think the same thing happened with Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Assassin's Creed Shadows was a just really milquetoast 6 out of 10 game. It was not awful. It wasn't a total failure. It played, I guess, kind of well, right? I mean, it was basically a video game, and it was not. It was a mid game, but like it was a little bit above mid. It had nice graphics, and there was, you know, a progression system to it, and you know, people thought it was okay, and it sold, I think, maybe a couple million copies, but it was like a 6. I'd say again, it was a 6 out of 10 game, but after $400 million are invested, can you afford a 6? Because that had to be their silver bullet. That had to be their, you know, their home run. That had to be the one game that averages out all of the previous commercial.
And you know what's the problem with that? And I think this is why, and I'll use Arc Raiders as an example. I think the reason games like Arc Raiders were such a success and why they worked the way they did is they obviously they were big-esque games. Arc Raiders specifically was a ambitious game, and there was a lot in the game, but the game didn't blow up with all of this stuff until it started getting traction. Arc Raiders started out, it was a simple experiment. Not really. I think it was an experiment. I think it was a social experiment, but it got its fucking footing, and then it started progressively adding things to it to build on the quality of life. Like they just added a new archetype, and you know, most of these games that are coming out, they're just boom, just a fucking like the bad cafeteria in a fucking a school, like in the movies where they just, oh, I'll have this, and they just scoop that nasty shit and slap it on the fucking tray and then get the fuck out of here kind of thing. That's what happens with a lot of these games that are coming out. They're not they're not thinking um realistically. I think they're thinking long term for sure. I mean, who wouldn't want their game to last forever? Um but they're throwing too much first and then not giving us little bits. Like Fortnite did that for a very long time. But now Fortnite is hitting a space where it's like, well, what do? We hit a ceiling. You either break the ceiling and do something completely unheard of, or you just count your losses because most games have to just count their losses. Do I think Fortnite shutting down? No, I don't think so. I don't see that happening.
Failures. So when you have a video game like that you plan on being a 9 and it only is a 6, well, then you've got to recalibrate. And I think that's what's happened, is that a lot of these studios are now recalibrating. And another big issue is that there are also overseas pressures as well. So, for example, it becomes a lot harder to make a video game, a fantasy video game, and compete whenever you have Chinese developers making games like Where Winds Meet.
I was just thinking that once he brought up that Where Winds Meet is a free to play game, and I love that game. It is such a fun. There's so much in that game. And that's another example. That's an outlier. There's a whole bunch of shit going on in that game. But it's a good game. I just started progressing through the story. It's a good game. It's a good game, and it's free. So what is it that these companies are missing on this side? as opposed to the international side.
Or you have Korean developers making games like Crimson Desert. So why is it that, for example, they can make these games?
And again, Crimson Desert, I still stand on what I've said about it. But look at the game. It is a big game. It has a lot of fun things in it. There's a lot of little pieces in it. But look at all the things that are presented to you as the gamer getting into the game. Like, and who's to say they're gonna add more shit to Crimson Desert for sure. There's no way they're not.
That are these expansive, massive open world, with when Rinsmeet, an example is better, it's a live service even. Why are they able to do it, but Western devs are not able to do it? Well, they have, they can go to market at a cheaper rate because obviously the cost of doing business over there is less. They're getting support from the government in China, at least. On top of that also, and you're going to see this happen also with Middle Eastern games too. I think the Middle East is going to start developing games. Well, they're not really even developing. They're usually they're buying games. They're buying companies. But I think you're going to continue to see that happen, is that they can develop at a lower cost. And they also are not focused on, and I talk about this a lot, right? But I do think it's a big component, is that, the video that we were watching earlier of like all of those like weird, stupid Karens talking about the process of points of privilege and everything. The game developers, a lot of them think like that. They do. And they have the same bureaucratic, waste of time, narcissistic, pathological, useless mindset that I think just wastes money infinitely. So they just infinitely hire more HR people. They infinitely create infinitely more meetings, and they just waste everybody's time and money. And at a certain point, that has to stop. Like the buck stops eventually. And when it does, that's the end of it. They don't get anything done. Yes, they basically get nothing done. Like, that's fundamentally what it is. And I think that you see this with World of Warcraft. You see this with a lot of other games. You saw it with Dragon Age, the Veilguard, you saw it with Concord, etc. And so when you invite a bunch of people into a...
Dragon Age Veilguard played so good, but I don't know what happened to it. I was very disappointed. Every Dragon Age game I've played, I've been disappointed with, except for Inquisition.
Into an organization that have a mindset that is absolutely antithetical to a creative process and to delivering a product to market, big surprise, you're going to have a failed product. And that's why they're being outperformed by such a ridiculous degree by Polish developers, other European developers like Sandfall that made Expedition 33, and especially by developers that are in China and Korea. Like, those guys are just blowing them out of the fucking water. And it's because they're able to bring a product to market for a cheaper cost with a more acute vision for what the player actually wants. And them being able to do that has caused them to completely control the market, basically. And look at, for example, gacha games. They're totally dominant. They're massive. Like, that's it. Absolutely. They own the market.
Absolutely.
And it's only going to continue to become more the case. Absolutely. Like, this isn't a problem that's going to improve. It will continue to get worse.
Is barely a thing anymore. Live services have basically eaten the top, and in trying to outspend and outmake Fortnite, the industry's done untold damage to itself, probably incalculable damage to itself. It's a total disaster, but in my view, it's not a surprising one. For a long time, we have not been paying money for video games. For a long time, we've been paying money for upcharges within video games. And I have a little feeling that the further the economics get away from being driven by developers making content, the worse things will be. Because why have a healthy stable of appropriately scoped games all targeting diverse audiences who are going to get a game made for them? Why have that when you can just make huge mono games to target every human on the planet? Doesn't really make sense, does it?
Because they don't work. And also there's a problem where... you can't build an ecosystem. Like, for example, like in a dinosaur ecosystem, there can only be so many T-Rexes.
Right.
There can only be so many brontosauruses. There can only be so many blue whales in the ocean right now. And do you know why? It's because an ecosystem like that cannot support a large number of these apex predator or massive, drains on that ecosystem. right? That's
It's
it.
the
And,
same
and so
thing
you
with
have
gaming.
to have those smaller games. And you can't have every company can't make their forever mono game and get the same feedback and the same type of returns that the first people that did it did, because obviously, you know, they don't have the first mover advantage, and on top of that, they don't have the ability to I have a mindset. This is my mindset. I only do dailies in one game. I might play multiple live service games at a time, but I only do one set of dailies.
Okay.
And that's a way for me to prevent myself from being on the infinity treadmill. I'm okay with dailies in a game, but the reality is that each single video game has an ecosystem that expects you to devote a large portion of time to it. And as somebody who likes to play different games, that's not feasible. And I think that causes people to break away and not play them, or it causes people to make a choice. And ultimately, there are only so many people out there that can make that choice.
All through the research, writing, recording,
yes, right now
stages,
it's Wuthering Waves.
This video, there were more
That's the game I
layoffs
play a lot.
at more companies.
I haven't played
Studios
since
shut
Crimson
down.
Desert
We'll
came out,
talk
though.
about that soon, but suffice to say, stuff is not looking good. But do you know who has got their job back in a really funny way? The Subnautica guys.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the Krafton CEO, who basically said,
Forgot all about
hello
that.
there, ChatGPT. I would like to get out of a $250 million
Had to drop
contract.
infield.
Please
Yeah, I
help.
dropped it
Turns
too.
out that was a bad idea. And you can learn all about it in the next video.
Yeah, I dropped infield. I stopped playing it because the game just it just drug on. And I felt like there was no real reason, there's no reason for me to keep playing. I mean, I beat the game.
All right, so there's enough of that. Oh, 6 more minutes of this shit. We'll see what he's
Dailies
talking
are
about.
chores. Well,
Anyway.
I unlocked everything. I have all the money. Infield got boring. The reason why it got boring is because the combat's bad. That's the reason why it's boring.
That's
If it
funny,
had
'cause that's
Wuthering
what I
Waves
thought.
combat or Dragon's Dogma combat, it would be amazing. But it's literally, you can play Arknight's Infield with a garage door opener. There's there is so little depth to the game
because that's what I
it's
thought.
just fucking boring. And yeah, and also it's lack of content, to be honest. I didn't even do the combat scenarios because it was the same thing. And also the bosses are so easy.
All right, so he's talking about Arknight Enfield. Anyway, as far as the Epic thing, I don't know what their plan is. I wouldn't know what their plan is, but I'm hoping that they figure out a way to make Fortnite exciting again for people who are playing it, and to bring in new players, because if things are going the direction that they're going, it's looking like it's about to be that time where Fortnite's going to be on a t-shirt. So let's just hope they figure it out sooner than later, and it's not pretty much dead in the water. I don't see that happening, but weirder things have happened. So here's to hoping, right?